Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Michael always was a man who valued stability. He liked waking up with the same routine, preparing his breakfast exactly the same way, walking to the office while listening to the same songs. He believed this showed maturity, a well-built life. Samantha, on the other hand, was the opposite. She had a restless spirit, smiled with her eyes, and wanted to experience everything, from a new ice cream flavor to the idea of skydiving during vacation. And it was exactly this contrast between them that made everything work. They met in the middle. He brought structure, she brought lightness. For years, it seemed to be working. On that Thursday morning, while having coffee, Samantha mentioned the trip, a beachfront resort with themed parties, water activities, massages, cocktails, and live music every night. Her excitement was almost childlike. She described the rooms, the infinity pools, and the themed dinners as if recounting a dream she couldn't wait to live. Michael smiled politely. He didn't like the idea. He never cared for places like that, nor the crowds, nor being surrounded by strangers pretending to be happy with colorful drinks in their hands. She noticed his lack of enthusiasm and gave him that look he knew all too well. She said she understood if he didn't want to go but that she needed something to break the monotony. Her voice carried a mix of firmness and sweetness. It was a request, but also a warning. Michael took a deep breath, took another sip of his now cold coffee, and asked if she would like to go with someone else. Samantha didn't hesitate. She said she could go with Grace, her best friend since college. Grace was fun, always ready for an adventure, and they hadn't traveled together in years. Michael agreed, not because he wanted to, but because he believed loving someone also meant giving space. In the days leading up to the trip, Samantha seemed lighter, excited about the preparations. She bought new clothes, tried on bikinis, spent hours watching videos about the resort. She laughed to herself while watching clips of poolside dance sessions, made lists on her phone, and talked to Grace every day. Michael observed all of this with that silent gaze of someone trying to hide his discomfort. She didn't seem to be running away from him. But something in her energy had changed. It was as if she had already left before actually going. When Samantha boarded the plane, she sent him a message saying she loved him and promising to send pictures. Michael replied with a heart emoji, though he wasn't sure what he really felt. In the first 2 days, she sent short messages full of emojis, along with photos of landscapes and exotic dishes. But soon her responses began to space out, and some messages went unanswered. One night, he sent a voice message talking about his day, about work, asking how she was. Hours later, she replied only, "I'm doing great, dear, I'll call you later." But the call never came. Michael fell asleep with the phone in his hand. On the third day, she disappeared for almost 20 hours. She only reappeared in the afternoon, saying the signal at the resort was unstable. He wanted to believe her, wanted to think that was the reason. But at that moment, he felt something tighten in his chest in a different way. He started reviewing recent memories, conversations, her reactions. There was a laugh that seemed forced, an enthusiasm that only appeared at certain moments, a kind of silence that hadn't existed before. And for the first time in a long while, Michael felt alone in his own marriage, wondering if he was being paranoid or if something had truly changed. When she returned, the first thing he noticed was the smell. A perfume he had never smelled on her before. Strong, striking, as if it had been sprayed recently. Samantha was smiling but in a hurry. She told stories from the trip as if she were on a talk show, laughed loudly, exaggerated the descriptions, and he just listened, quietly. On the outside, a present husband. On the inside, a man trying to piece together something that might have been broken long before the trip began. During that first week after Samantha's return, Michael tried to keep his routine. He woke up at the usual time, made coffee, opened the living room windows, played the same playlist on his phone while organizing his work bag. But no matter how hard he tried to pretend everything was normal, there was something different in the way he now noticed the details. Before, he moved through the days with a certain calmness. Now, every small action of Samantha's seemed to grab his attention. The way she avoided staying in the same room for too long. How she held her phone more tightly, always face down, as if hiding something, protecting something. There was a new subtle effort on her part to seem spontaneous. And that told him more than any explanation ever could. One Saturday morning, while she was in the shower, Michael decided to put away the clothes from the suitcase she still hadn't unpacked. It seemed simple, almost automatic. He just wanted to see if he could find space in the closet. But the moment he opened the main compartment, he saw a set of lingerie he had never seen before. Delicate fabrics, expensive brands, bold colors. Samantha had never cared for that kind of lingerie. It wasn't her style, nor did it match the preferences they had developed over time. This was new. It was chosen with a purpose. She wore it thinking of someone, and that someone wasn't him. Michael closed the suitcase gently, his hands trembling. He didn't say a word. He went back to the kitchen, washed his cup, and spent the rest of the day in silence. That night, he said he had a headache and went to bed early. He lay on his back facing away from her, pretending to sleep for hours, while he heard Samantha on the phone, getting up and returning as if restless. When she finally went to bed, he kept his eyes closed and smelled that same perfume she had brought back from the trip. A strong, elegant scent that now made him uncomfortable. A few days later, while Samantha was working in the bedroom, Michael found himself browsing the Instagram page of the resort. It was late. He said he was going to get something to eat and took the chance to be alone in the living room, phone in hand. He opened the official page of the resort, scrolled through the photos and posts, and decided to watch the videos saved by guests. There were dozens of them, but one caught his eye. It showed a pool party, lots of music, laughter, colorful drinks, people dancing around the pool. He paused at one point. Something caught his attention. A woman with loose hair, wearing a dress he remembered Samantha buying before the trip, dancing close to a man in an open shirt and sunglasses. The image wasn't very clear, but it was enough. The way she swayed in the dance, how they seemed in sync, how their bodies were close. It was Samantha, and she wasn't with Grace. Grace appeared a few seconds later, on the sidelines, talking to other people, unaware of what was happening between Samantha and that man. Michael paused and replayed it several times. He tried to find an angle that proved it was someone else, but everything confirmed it. It was her. The way she moved her shoulders, that half smile, her arms around his neck, none of it fit a simple girl's trip. This was something else. It hurt. It knocked the ground out from under his feet. He put the phone in his pocket and went upstairs. Samantha was reading, or pretending to read. He stood at the door for a few seconds. She looked up and smiled, as if everything was fine. His voice came out dry. Who was that man in the pool video? Samantha took a while to respond, seeming confused, perhaps surprised that he had found out. She tried to downplay it, said it was just an event host. But the way she avoided his eyes told him more than any excuse. When he insisted, she hesitated, changed her story, tried to force a laugh. In the end, she said, "It's not what it looks like." Those words echoed like a gunshot. It was exactly what it looked like. Someone having fun in secret, living another story away from obligations. The woman he loved was now trying to get out of a difficult situation with weak explanations. And inside him, he was in ruins, but remained calm, almost cold, as if the pain had given way to clarity. Trust had dissolved. He asked again, firmly. She lost her composure, cried, said she loved him, that she was confused, that the trip had affected her in a way she didn't expect. She tried to justify, saying she had felt lonely, ignored in recent months. Every word was a subtle way of shifting the blame onto him, as if that explained what she had done. Michael listened in silence. On the outside, motionless, on the inside, in turmoil. She was still sobbing when he took a step back. He looked at her for another moment, an empty gaze, as if understanding everything he needed to, and then simply turned around. He walked out of the room without saying a word. No yelling, no goodbye, no promises, just the sound of his own footsteps echoing down the hallway. That night, he didn't sleep. He stayed in the living room, staring into nothing, trying to figure out when their story had started to derail and, especially, trying to accept that there was no going back. The house had been silent since the previous night. Neither of them slept well after what happened with the video. The truth was there, like an abyss they couldn't cross. He didn't need to hear anything else. He already knew enough. The next morning, he woke up before the alarm. He lay in bed for a while, staring at the ceiling, until he made a decision. He got up slowly, went to the closet, and took out the blue suitcase she always used for short trips. It wasn't out of anger or impulse. It was a conclusion. He started gathering her clothes, folding them carefully. He packed her shoes, cosmetics, the new perfumes, chargers, everything. He didn't bother choosing or leaving anything behind. Everything had to go. It was as if each piece of clothing he packed was another piece of their story that needed to be removed from the house and from him. As he carried the suitcase to the living room, Samantha appeared at the top of the stairs, barefoot, her eyes swollen from a sleepless night. She came down slowly, looking at the scene in disbelief. Michael didn't speak right away. He just left the suitcase in the middle of the living room and pointed to the door. She tried to approach, but he stepped back. She asked what was happening. He said that during the night he had decided she no longer belonged there. She swallowed hard, tried to stay calm, but her voice trembled. She said she had made a mistake, but it was just once. She was confused. He had distanced himself many times too. They had a history. Things couldn't end like this. He said it had ended the moment she chose to become part of someone else's story. She cried and tried to touch him, but again he stepped back. She begged for another chance. Said they could fix it, for everything they had built. He said they had built something she chose to destroy. And now he was just cleaning up the wreckage. She fell silent, looked at the suitcase, then at him, and realized there was no room to insist. With trembling hands, she grabbed the handle and left, crying softly. Michael closed the door firmly behind her, as if putting a period at the end of a sentence. The sound of the door closing was more symbolic than any argument ever could be. In the following days, she sent messages, some filled with regret, others calmer, as if hoping time would lessen the weight of what she had done. Michael didn't reply. He contacted a lawyer, started the divorce process, and got everything in order. He only asked that it be quick, no delays. Their story had already dragged on too long. When the papers arrived, he signed them without hesitation. 3 weeks passed. Michael was driving home in silence when his phone rang. It was Samantha. He thought about ignoring it, but something made him answer. On the other end, she was out of breath, struggling to control her emotions. She said she needed to tell him something. He stayed silent. She said she was pregnant. He felt his heart beat strongly for a second, and his mind went blank. The silence stretched between them. Then she said she had found out that week, that she had gone to the doctor. Michael remained silent. The car kept moving, but the road no longer felt the same to him. The story he thought had ended might have just begun again. 2 months passed after that call. Michael continued his life as if he hadn't heard anything. He kept working, reorganized his routine, avoided mentioning Samantha. Whenever someone brought up the subject, he changed the topic. To others, he seemed cold, insensitive, almost cruel. But no one knew what he was carrying inside. He simply chose not to hurt himself anymore with her manipulations. Samantha, on the other hand, didn't give up. She called, sent messages, remained present in all his social circles. She talked to Michael's mother, father, brothers, cousins. She cried to everyone, saying she was alone, abandoned, and pregnant with a child whose father had turned his back on her. Her story touched everyone. Michael's mother stopped answering her calls. His usually reserved father sent a direct message saying he expected more empathy from his son. His brothers distanced themselves. Childhood friends looked at him differently. The worst part was that no one asked for his side of the story. Until, on a random Friday, Noah, his best friend since college, showed up at his house unannounced. He brought 2 beers and a frustrated look. He sat on the couch and got straight to the point. He said everyone was talking as if Michael were the villain and that he knew that wasn't who he was. Michael took a deep breath and, for the first time in weeks, told the whole story. The resort video, the dance with the stranger, the new lingerie, the coldness in her eyes, the careless lies, the argument, the suitcase, the separation, and finally, the call where she announced the pregnancy. Noah listened in silence. When Michael finished, Noah said he knew him and that Michael knew what he needed to do. A prenatal DNA test. There were tests that could be done during pregnancy. Expensive, but available. If Samantha had nothing to hide, she would agree. Michael thought about it all night. The idea seemed harsh, invasive, but it was the only way to protect himself from another blow. The next morning, he called Samantha. She answered quickly, as if expecting the call. The conversation was tense. He said he wanted a prenatal non-invasive DNA test. She was silent, then spoke in an offended tone. She asked if he was saying she had slept with someone else. He said he needed clarity. She was the one who disrespected the marriage, and he had the right to be sure. She cried, said he was being cruel, that she had never been with anyone else, that the child was his and that she was tired of proving the obvious. But in the end, she agreed. They scheduled the test at a specialized clinic. He went with her, cold and silent. She tried to make conversation, tried to smile, brought up old memories on the way. He remained distant. The procedure was performed, and despite the tension, both left in silence. 2 weeks later, Michael received a call from the clinic. The results were ready, and it was clear he wasn't the father. He stood still for a few minutes, staring at the results. The words were there, raw, direct, emotionless, not consistent with paternity. It confirmed what his heart already knew. Still, it hurt, not because he was surprised, but because it proved that all the chaos of the past few months could have been avoided if people had believed him from the start. He folded the document carefully, placed it in an envelope, and went to his parents' house. When he arrived, everyone was there, his mother, his father, and his 2 older brothers. The atmosphere was heavy. Short comments, distant looks. He didn't say a word. He entered the living room, went straight to the center, and handed over the envelope. His mother looked alarmed. His father frowned. His brothers exchanged glances. He left without a word, closing the door behind him with a silence as definitive as the truth in that envelope. Hours later, at home, Michael heard a knock on the door. When he opened it, Samantha was there, looking defeated, her face marked by tears, her hands trembling. She tried to hide her pain, but she was fragile, desperate. She asked for forgiveness, said she knew she had made mistakes, that she had hurt him. But the child needed a father. She took a step forward, her eyes pleading. Michael stared at her for a few seconds, serious and calm, breathing deeply. Then, with the same composure he had shown from the beginning, he simply wished her luck and closed the door. In the following weeks, messages started coming in, first from his brothers, then from his father. Everyone wanted to talk, asking if they could see him. His mother showed up with a cake, tears in her eyes, saying she couldn't sleep anymore after learning the truth. One by one, they reached out again, each with the same silent plea in their eyes, forgiveness. Michael listened without bitterness, but also without rushing. He didn't want everything to go back to how it was. He just wanted people to see him for who he really was, a man who always wanted only respect and honesty. Life finally found a new order. The wounds didn't disappear, but they began to heal. And in this quiet fresh start, he found something no one could take away from him: peace. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.